Welcome to the Wild West. This is the War Pony podcast, where we are your trading post for all upcoming productions, connections, and tricks of the trade. I'm your host, Cassidy Honey, bringing West Texas to you. I am a wife, mom, businesswoman, holistic equine therapist, and team roper. Relax and watch the sunset as we highlight events, consult on business, share knowledge of the industry, and talk to the legends and rising stars of the community. Join the tribe and make War Pony your one-stop shop for all things West Texas. All right, guys, welcome to the War Pony podcast. I'm your host, Cassidy Honey, and I'm here today with Macy Ward. She owns Stop the Clock Acuscope, so she's going to talk to us a little bit about how that works and who she is and her career. Thank you for being on our podcast.
Yes, I'm super excited to be here.
So for those who don't know you, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So my name's Macy Ward. I'm originally from Lufkin, Texas. I moved up to Lubbock back in 2020 for school. Well, school didn't go as planned. Got married, had a baby, all the things. Went to Vegas, I guess, last year for the all-in, and I had tried Acuscope on my mare. And it had made such a difference from the first round to the second round. I told my husband, I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I don't care what we have to do. This is what I want to do. So from there, I started researching the Acuscope. And of course, whenever you start looking at the Acuscope, you get into the Equiscope, and then you're like, I don't even know what I'm looking at, because it is vague, because they want you to do the proper training to even get your hands on one. So I found ATS, which is Animal Therapy Systems, and that's how you get certified to do the Acuscope and Milepulse. So I signed up for the class. I talked to Molly Wells. She was my instructor. She's out of California, and went from there, did the class, did the testing, got certified, and it's been blowing and going since.
So what is the difference in Acuscope versus the other PEMF treatment options?
So this is my favorite question, because there's just not enough knowledge on the market about modalities, and then there's also not enough training to accommodate different modalities. So if you look at the Acuscope and the Milepulse, not only is it FDA approved, which a lot of things hold FDA approval, but it's an FDA approved medical instrument. So it's not just a therapy modality. Like, this is the real deal medical equipment. So with the Acuscope, the biggest difference is we have biofeedback. Nothing else on the market has biofeedback. Biofeedback allows us to go in, pinpoint the area of pain or cellular dysfunction.
And so you actually get readings there when you're...
Yes, so the biofeedback is our readings. And so, like, we're trained to know what the readings mean and what we're looking at. And then we work in, contact with vets on a lot of cases, because hey, my Acuscope is showing this. I can't diagnose this. I haven't been to vet school, all the things. So I need you to
localize a region.
Yes, and rarely are we wrong. It's just like...
How does it get its reading?
Cellular function. So if the cells are stagnant, not moving, obviously there's something there. You've got a blockage, or I've seen a lot of tears here lately, or scar tissue's another one. And then we go in to a vet, and I tell my clients, like, hey, let's just say the lower lumbar region, he's reading at a 0, which means that cells are not moving. They're stagnant. Mm-hmm. I would go get him x-rayed. Usually it's kissing spine, and it's right in that area.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you mentioned when you were running in Vegas.
Yeah.
So what was going on with your horse at the time that you kind of was like, let's try it?
She wasn't firing. She was blowing off her first barrel. Like, she was just not clocking good at all. She was shouldering into the second, and I was like, we just drove 16 hours or whatever to come play Wreck-It
Ralph. So much money, we're not doing this.
Like, what are we doing? So, like most barrel racers, and we're all guilty of it, you look for a quick fix. And so me, I'm like, well, if she needs an injection, like, then you got to lay them off for 3 days. We don't have 3 days. Round 2's tomorrow. What can I do? Well, I walked around and talked to the cryotherapy people, and I was like, I don't think I'm comfortable with that, because if you really look at what it does and what it is, it can actually hurt a horse more than it can help them.
Yeah.
And it's like, why do that? got to talking to the Acuscope lady, and the biggest thing about her was she was not pushing it on me. She's like, it works, and that's very much how I am now. It works, you'll see it works, and then you can thank me later kind of deal. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm down to try it. I tried it. She fixed my mare. She was 7/10 faster in the second round. I mean, just 24 hours later, she actually was eating.
Would you say it's a therapy? It's what would be the word you'd classify that at? Because it's a treatment.
We have to be careful with what we say that it is, because we're not treating anything.
But it's something that you can do at a race.
Yes.
Before a race.
Yes.
During a race. So you don't have to have that layoff time.
Exactly. There doesn't have to be any layoff time other than 3 hours prior to a run. We need full rest 3 hours prior to a run. Just let the session do what it's supposed to do.
Let the cells be able to.
Yes, and just let that horse really get the benefit off of it. And that's the biggest problem I have when I go to a race and I'm working is, oh, hey, I'm up in 5. Do you think we can run a session? No. That's a waste of your money.
How long does a session usually run for you?
First sessions are always longer. So you're looking at like 45 minutes, because we're going in, pinpointing everything. Especially if it's a horse I know and I'm not talking to anyone, because obviously I'm a talker with my owners, then usually I can be in and out in like 20, 30-ish minutes is about how long it takes me.
So for the people who are at a barrel race, typically in the barrel racing world, we administer drugs prior to events. So how does that work with Acuscope? Because I know you have to be, sorry not to interrupt you, I just know you have to be a little cautious with certain treatments due to the way they metabolize or break down things. So
that's my first question when I'm at a barrel race is, has this horse had Lasix? Lasix is our big one. It dehydrates everything. When a horse is dehydrated, that messes with our readings. So that's like the big key factor in horses at races is Lasix. Banamine wise, if you give a horse Banamine, obviously I'm not going to see the inflammatory response that they probably have on a day-to-day basis. So it just all kind of depends on what you gave them. But usually if you tell me what you gave them, I can adjust to what we need. But if they do have Lasix, I can't even touch them until after they've had water.
Prior to probably running at that point.
Yeah.
With your Acuscope, do you do multiple treatments typically, or is it something that...
Yes. So starting out a horse, you do 3 treatments over the course of 3 days, or you can do over the course of 2 days or whatever. And that's what gives them that long lasting effect, right? So I have had people come up and they're like, hey, I have a high stakes run and I just really need a boost. And that's what I did in Vegas. And it's in full disclosure. Like, if you do one session, it's not going to last you like you want it to. But if you're like in a pinch,
like, it can help you out.
Yeah, like high stakes race and you just paid $1,000 to run, like, okay, but you just need to understand this is not gonna last.
Yeah.
So
how do you do the long-lasting effects of Acuscope? How does that work?
So the way that works is we come in, do your 3 sessions, right, in a row, and then from there, depending on how the horse is reading, where they're reading, and what their issues are, then we make a schedule. So sometimes I come out every 2 weeks and we do 1 session every 2 weeks, or some horses can go as far as like a month and a half, and I don't have to see them for another month. And whenever we come back, we don't do the 3 sessions again. It's just the 1 session, see what we're doing unless something new has happened.
So when you first see a horse, can you walk me through your process of like a brand new horse you've never seen?
Yeah.
How would you address it?
So the first thing that I do is, 1, I need to know if the horse has ever been Acuscoped. And then based on what I get told and who did the horse, then we go from there. Because not every Acuscope therapist is the same. Not everybody's trained. Some are outlaws. Like, you just kind of have to know what you're dealing with. And that's the hardest news to break to an owner. Is like, hey, this horse hasn't been started properly. Like, I don't know how well this treatment's going to go. Whatever. Well, if they haven't been Acuscope, then we go from there. Then I want to know, okay, well, are they on any medications? Do you give them Prevcox? Do you give them anything to keep them comfortable? What are the issues you're having? What has your vet stated? And usually most of like my gnarly cases of lameness, I'm under vet prescription anyway. So It's just kind of like, I need to know where we're at on vet. I want to see MRIs. I want to see vet notes. I want to see x-rays, ultrasounds, everything, because that's how I put all of my pieces together. If there's nothing that's like, oh, this horse is navicular. Okay. Well, then we're like just going through and trying to find what we're trying to find. So then we do a physical palpation. So we'll do a physical exam. I go through the horse, I palpate him, I look at different things. Really, I look at things that vets usually don't look for, like the brachiocephalicus, which is, right there in the shoulder and it runs up the neck. And, most vets are legs and back. That's what you're looking at, right. Hind end, so joints. Especially if they tell me I've been to 20 different vets and we haven't found anything. I'm like, okay, well, let's think outside the box. And then I'll tell you, hey, this is what we found, and then go from there. What I do next is I do readings. So I go through whatever problem areas we might have, or whatever palpated sore, or if I have a suspicion, I'm like, oh yeah, let's look at this. And then we go through and read it. I write them all down, and then I present it to the owner like, okay, this is your first problem of cellular dysfunction. This is your next. And we just kind of go through the list. From there, that's whenever the treatments come in and everything's, set up for the horse. So the
treatment is way more spot oriented versus a whole body.
Yes. The only thing that is whole body is what we call a spinal opening. It runs from the pole all the way down to like the root of the tail is how that works. And it addresses the entire body and it opens it up. But whenever you're dealing with like lame horses, it's like, okay, well, yes, the spinal opening to start, but then we need to move on to more controlled treatment.
So if someone was to call you today and to say, hey, my horse has taken a lame step, not sure what's going on, or my horse has been off, those are your types of calls, and that's how you kind of know, or explain to me better how you would know if your horse is a candidate for Acuscope.
So any horse is a candidate for Acuscope, and I stand on this highly. So honestly, if it were up to me, I would have people letting me do their 2-year-olds before they even start having issues. So it's not just for lame horses. So my instructor was telling us, she had a horse that she got whenever it was real young, has been Acuscoping it all of her life, and she's never had to inject her. It keeps their body so healthy on a holistic standpoint. And I believe in injections, and my vet can vouch for that because Lord knows he's tired of me coming in. But on a holistic standpoint, if you keep those cells healthy, then you're stopping that arthritic changes if it's not genetic.
Right.
The arthritic changes, the fluid buildup in the joints, all of the things that we constantly face over and over with horses.
Especially performance horses.
Yes, and especially your barrel horses. And a lot of things are missed. And I mean, that just is what it is, because, we can't just inject everything.
Or like you said, you start thinking, oh, I got this big event coming. An injection is a quick fix too. You do get that immediate deal where,
right.
2 months ago, they probably should have started setting up appointments with you to get that horse where it should be for that event coming up.
Before that happens. Yeah, and that was my selling point on why I wanted to do the Acuscope so badly. And I've had a lot of skepticism, and I love that because I know that it works, and I'm very nonchalant about it.
Yeah.
You either believe in it or you don't, and I don't care which one, because people come to me and they're like, I don't know, because it's very not hoodoo voodoo, but a lot of people don't understand it. It's way above what we're used to seeing in the equine industry. And so whenever they come to me and I start taping electrodes to their horse, they're like, I don't know what's happening. So how does that work
for the horses? I mean, that's totally a whole...
I'm not huge on drugs, but let me tell you what. I had a bay horse come to me, and she's a very good friend of mine. And he had intractable pain syndrome, meaning no vet could figure out what was wrong with him. Well, we figured out something in his shoulder was just really bothering him. And usually vets, they don't really look into the shoulder. Something in his shoulder was really bothering him. Girl, I had to drug him.
He was just not about it.
Oh my God. He drug me around the property.
For those that don't know, there's a ton of these little cords coming off into your machine.
Yes.
So you're actually taping things to the horse.
So we take that masking tape and we tape the electrodes, and the electrodes have cords that run into our machine.
to get the readings.
Yes. So these horses are like, why is my hind end tied up? And they kind of like lose it. Most of them are pretty chill. They're like, okay, whatever. Like they've had everything done to them. And this one has too. But he was just like, mm-mm. So Dorm Gel was his best friend.
Yeah.
And I told her that, like, hey.
So if a client does come to you and they have a horse like that, they need to provide that sedation.
Yes, I prefer for them to provide it, but I try to keep it on me just in case, because at the end of the day, like, I can't afford to get hurt, but I also want to help the horse.
Well, you can't afford for your machine to get drug across God's great country.
No, I sure cannot.
So if a horse does freak out, since it is taped to them, is it pretty giving? Like, does it release pretty quick?
Yes,
okay.
And it doesn't really release out of the instrument, but those cords are like curly cords, and they have a bunch of stretch to them. So whenever they start hi-yawing across the parking lot, I can pull them before they pull the instrument out. Yes. Oh yes. And then they're just taking my little curly cords through the parking lot, and I'm like,
they just keep going, you know?
And I'm like, perfect.
Yeah, good advertisement. If anyone wants Acuscope, catch the horse.
Come do it. Yes. Oh my gosh.
How did you get the name Stop the Clock?
Honestly, I don't know. Yeah, that's a great question. I was sitting in class and like I was brain racking like what I was going to call it, and I was like, you know what? I really like Stop the Clock, because that's what we're all trying to do. Like, you know, I work on nothing but timed event people. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're roping calves or on the head side or running barrels. Like, we're all stopping the clock. So I was like, you know, stop the clock faster whenever you start Acuscoping your horse, and that has proven to be true. So
that is cool. I've always saw that, and I thought it was a perfect fitting.
I love it. Yeah.
So how can people find you to book an appointment? You're on social media?
Yes. So I'm on Facebook, and my Facebook has my number on it. I'm not on Instagram or anything like that. I've got my personal TikTok, but like everything's been pretty word of mouth. I set up at races, and like that's my other thing, is I'm not really just tied down to West Texas. Like, I go from all over Texas, from San Antonio to Dallas to all over the place, to Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, over to New Mexico.
Traveling.
Like, yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere. I might be in Nevada in December. So, I mean,
how does that work with your certification, going to different states?
So we can work anywhere.
Okay.
Once you're certified, you can work anywhere. Stay mindful of other Acuscope therapists. And there are people that are not certified that are still working on horses. And my biggest thing on that is I feel like people need to know their therapist and what that means, and take the research before you just throw something on your horse. And like, I didn't even research the Acuscope whenever I tried it. And that's saying something. So, you know, that's kind of contradictory. But what I do know is whenever I was talking to the cryotherapy people, I was like, I don't think that's for me. I don't know about it. But whenever I went over to the Acuscope lady, she was very informative, very to the point, and like she knew her stuff. Like, she knew her stuff.
So you felt you got that quality behind the product.
Yes, and that's how it should be, because our training is extremely extensive. Like, it is anatomy and acupressure points.
How long did that take you?
That took me 2.5 weeks, I think is what it did. And we worked from basically sun up to sundown, and we had homework at night.
Where was that at?
Grandview.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like Central Texas area.
How'd you find that school?
Through ATS.
Oh, okay.
Through Animal Therapy Systems. That's how you go and get certified. You have ATS certification is what it is. And then there are some people that claim that they do certification courses, and that's not really true. So definitely researching what you're doing before you do it, on a consumer standpoint and also a business standpoint, is huge.
How is it having your own business now? What did you do before?
I was a college student, stay-at-home mom. I did all of like the college jobs, hostess, and worked in an office, and, you know, anything to make a buck, to make ends meet. And then I was like, you know, after being a stay-at-home mom for a little bit, I was like, you know, I'd like to go back to work, and then found the Acuscope, and I was like, nope, this is it. This is what I want to do, and I've loved it.
That's exciting.
I've absolutely loved it.
What is one of your like favorite cases to talk about?
That's a hard one.
Yeah. I mean, minus the horse running through the parking lot.
Honestly, you would think that it would be some crazy kind of lameness, but I think it would be my first success story. And that is Blake Leaves Yorgo's horse. And she's a little girl out of Lubbock, and she's awesome. And her horse's name is Boom. Well, Boom is older gelding. He's always been like your solid 3D horse. He's amazing. But we did basically just some performance optimization on him, and he was like up in the 1D the day after we got through his 3 treatments, and everyone was so excited. I think that's probably my favorite story because we all never thought, but I got to really see what it could do. Yeah.
And for a little girl and all the things.
Yeah, and she's amazing.
So you've said a couple times the 3 treatments. How do you stack those? What does that look like?
So usually we stack them over the course of 3 days.
Okay.
But sometimes, like whenever I do my Midland runs, I do 2 days. So the first day I'll work them that morning, come back to them that night, and then work them again in the morning. And then they've got their 3 treatments within 48 hours.
Perfect. So it's not always ideal that you get to go and work on these horses. You do live in Lubbock and you do travel to Midland and things like that. And we do have local people that offer, the PEMF things. So let's touch a little bit on that, on, when is it good to use those in between your Acuscope treatments?
Right. So knowing the horse's condition is going to be the biggest factor in knowing what modality to use. So if you have a horse with a torn suspensory, obviously we probably don't want to MagnaWave that, right? Because that's not what that modality is really set up to do if you think about it. With contracting muscles and releasing muscles, if a horse has a tear, that's doing nothing more but just causing further damage. Say we have a horse with some kissing spine and his back is just really, really tight and they can't get it to loosen up even after injections. I've Acuscoped, and you're like, hey, what can I do to maintain? Find a very educated MagnaWave therapist that can come on a low setting and address that horse.
Keep them comfortable.
Yes.
Keep the blood flowing.
Keep the blood flowing. But I feel like everybody should just really look into, on an educational standard of what there should be in the equine industry, but also what there is lacking of, and understand their therapist and the therapy that they're wanting to use. So every condition is different. I know that the MagnaWave does really good for abscesses, for ones that won't bust, like it does amazing. But, if you have, my favorite, if you have a deep digital flexor tear, the Beamer is probably not going to do what you need it to do. The MagnaWave's probably not going to do what you need it to do. So under vet recommendation, usually it is the Acuscope, because that's a super, super horrible condition.
Right. And it isolates so much better to those specific injuries.
Yes. So it's all just an understanding. And I work with Presley McCarley. She's a chiropractor. And chiro and Acuscope, shockwave and Acuscope goes really well together as well. From our findings that we've done, I've worked with a couple of vets with shockwave and Acuscope combined. It's done really well. But like having a good relationship with a chiropractor as well is super important. And also a chiropractor that knows what they're doing. And she does an amazing job. She keeps notes on all of those horses. She sends them to me. And like we kind of go back and forth. I'll call her and be like, hey, I just read an SI on a horse and his hips are like 3 inches away from each other. Like they're way off. Like I really think this horse needs you. And then usually what we do is I'll run a session, kind of loosen up that body. She comes out and pops. After she comes out and pops, I run another session, and that lets your chiro stay longer.
Yeah.
So, working in conjunction, like you don't have to be like, I'm all gung-ho MagnaWave or I'm all gung-ho Acuscope. Like, but understanding how they complement each other. And I feel like there should be more of that in this industry, because even some vets, they don't complement each other. And it's like we all have to work together if we want to be successful for the horse. But I feel like some of that gets lost.
And there's different tools that do different things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like people forget that, hey, you can't just go to a chiropractor and then leave your horse off of injections and be like, well, you got chiropractic, so you should be fine.
Well,
it's
like,
all a circle.
Same with getting their feet done, you gotta make sure you stay up on that. You start changing angles and you start doing a bunch of things.
Yeah, and with these performance horses, we rely so heavily on our farriers, our vets, our chiropractors, our therapists. Like, they all should be able to work with each other.
All the things that we don't get, but our horses do.
Yes, and I feel like if you ever have a therapist tell you that they will not work in conjunction with a vet, they do not need to be your therapist, because that is not in the best interest of the horse. Because at the end of the day, Randy Lewis is my vet. He's out in Abilene. He owns West Texas Equine. He is absolutely amazing, and he will work with anybody, and I just love him to death. And he has always been very open with some of my clients that I've sent up there about like, hey, I found this. I'm not real sure if I'm right, but like, I need you to like look further. And that's how I feel like it should be. If your therapist cannot work with a vet, they probably are in the wrong practice.
Yeah, it's a very, very good way to put it. Just working together and having that communication and everything else.
Yes, and there are several cases where I have turned them away until they see a vet. Because honestly, this is also where we're misconstrued. If your first call is to a therapist for something that is chronically lame, you probably also need to reevaluate what you're doing. Like, you shouldn't call me. You should call the vet, and then I'll work under vet recommendation.
Yeah. What's best for that equine athlete and how you can do and to optimize it. I mean, time is money,
and if we don't know what we're working with, then not only am I wasting my time, I'm wasting your money. And I'm big on that. I will never waste a client's money. I do not believe in that. I don't think it's fair. If I feel like I cannot help that horse, I don't want to waste your money, because I wouldn't want anybody to waste mine.
Yeah.
So what good would it do for me to just kind of guess around and be like, oh, we were working on the knee, but he's navicular? Like,
sounds good to me.
Yeah. Like, we just wasted your time and your money. And I don't believe in that.
Yeah. I think that that's very valuable, because you can never get that time back.
Yeah.
And
100%.
I always tell everybody, if they're like, oh, I think my horse is off, I'm just going to give it some time off. I'm like, just go to the vet.
Yes.
Because you would much rather give a true 6 weeks off that is going to be in the best benefit for that horse than just give 6 weeks off, have to go back to the vet, and then find out that what that stall rest was doing was not doing you any good.
Yes. Yes, 100%. And, I think a lot of people just really forget that everything works together as a team. You can't solely rely on just one thing. And my clients, especially my good clients that have been with me since I've started and we work on them religiously, they understand that whenever I say, it's time for the vet, or hey, he needs a recheck, like, I mean it.
Yeah.
Like, I will not show back up until you take them to the vet. And I feel like more people should be harder like that, because if you really have the best interest of the horse in mind, then you will do that. But as soon as that therapist doesn't, I can't respect you.
Yeah. We did talk a little bit about the benefits from it. Obviously, when you first got into this, we're going to pinch, you're at a race, you did see a lot of success. We've talked about the horses who have tears and actual lameness issues and kind of the rehabilitation side. But let's go a little bit further into like all the benefits of Acuscope.
So we have 4 benefits. There would be performance optimization and what they're used for. Performance optimization, rehabilitation. And rehabilitation looks like, hey, we work on 3 to 5 days a week, rechecks every 30 days in coordination with the vet. And also on rehab, I have to have a vet say so for rehabilitation cases. And then general maintenance. So that's like your horses that get injections every 6 months. They're a little uncomfy in their hocks towards 5 months, and you come out and you do them. And then preventative maintenance, which is before the problem even starts. Like, let's get ahead of the 8 ball before we even have to worry about knee injections or surgeries or anything like that.
So we mentioned vets quite a bit during this. How does that look like? So if I come to you and I have a horse and I'm like, hey, my horse is pretty normal injections, whatever. Do I reach out to my vet at that point? Or say, let me give you a better example. If I have a horse that does have a tendon tear.
Yeah.
and I'm like, hey, Macy, my horse has a tendon tear. This is my vet. What is your step? Do you contact the vet? Do I contact the vet? How do you get that release from the vet?
So if I know the vet, I'll contact the vet. If the owner's comfortable with contacting the vet and just getting a letter stating like, hey, this is what's happened, because I require the vet notes, especially for rehab cases, and then give me that approval to go ahead and start rehabilitating that horse with them in close contact with those 30-day rechecks, especially for like a tendon tear.
Yeah.
And then go from there. So really it just kind of bounces off. Like if it's a vet that I really know, usually they've already recommended me anyway. But if not, I'll just reach out to them and be like, hey, I have Susie Q's horse. Like, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
You know, and then just go from there.
So with the MagnaWave, you mentioned there's obviously the different settings, right? You said on the low settings.
Yeah.
How does that work with Acuscope? Is there settings?
Yes. So we call them frequencies is what they are. They're different frequencies of our microcurrent. That's what the Acuscope runs on, is microcurrent. And it's the same microcurrent amperage that is produced naturally in the body by the horse. So with that being said, the body doesn't reject the treatment. So there's also nothing going on. It looks like it's not even on. There's no muscle quivers. There's nothing different.
Is there any sort of like sound or hum? Or?
From the instrument, yes. From the Acuscope and the MyoPulse, yes. And so the Acuscope actually works off the nervous system. That's how it addresses the problem. That's how the current moves. So it has indirect access to your muscles. The MyoPulse has direct access to your muscles. So depending on what we're working with depends on what I use. Now, most of the time we use the Acuscope and the MyoPulse together, and it's a pretty awesome combination. But with that being said, that microcurrent that is pushed into that horse's body is what's stimulating and recharging those cells to get them moving and get them back to normal, to where they're trying to heal the body. So, you know, if you're, like I said earlier, your cells are stagnant and no healing's going on. Like, it's just there.
So in your professional opinion, is there like good supplements that you suggest your clients go on for muscle repair and things like that?
Yes. One that works really well in conjunction with what I do and what I found is OptiWise. It does an amazing job.
I've never even heard of that.
So OptiWise, and see, I don't know like all the nutritional benefits and stuff like that, but OptiWise, I've had like 6 digital flexor tears in the last 3 months, I think. And that OptiWise, I mean, it has really helped accelerate that healing on top of that Acuscope.
And is this something that you can provide, or where can your clients find it?
HF&C carries it for Lubbock. I'm sure Amarillo does too. I don't really know about down here, but it is liquid gold. It's not liquid, it's a pellet, but it is the good stuff.
And what about, is there things that you can do at home with your horse in between treatments to kind of help get you to that next one?
Yes, I am big on stretching. Stretching is absolutely phenomenal, and I don't know why more people don't do it. You know,
it's crazy because in humans, I mean, that's the first thing you do. That's the first warm up, you stretch a little bit.
And you know, we were all in athletics or gym class.
At some point,
you know, we all had to stretch at 7:00 in the morning, and it was just horrible, you know, but that's how you started everything. So why would we not do that with our horses? But a lot of people don't, and a lot of people don't know how to properly warm up a horse either. And on that front, it's like every horse is different. I've got a gray horse that, I mean, I walk him around for 20 minutes and then you lope him about 4 circles and you got to let him roll. And then my roan horse is like, okay, well, let's warm up for 45 minutes, you know.
But I remember the name of this guy, but my husband watches his videos and he counts the strides of his horse, and he will go like 50 strides to the right, 50 strides to the left, and like all sorts of, like, it's very equal, but he goes by the stride of the horse. I thought that was really cool.
That is pretty cool.
Because, I mean, we all get tired of counting circles.
Yeah, I'm over here like just off a feel, especially for a gray horse. I'm like, are you ready or what? Yeah. Whenever he does his head shake, I'm like, okay, he's warm. He's ready to go. Yeah. But not all of them are that easy.
What other products do you have for your clients? I believe you have the cookies, right?
Boomer Bites. Oh my gosh, and they are like horse crack.
Yeah,
like they are
peppermint.
Yes, and they are addictive for the horses, and people don't believe me until they buy them. Kind of like they don't believe me with the Acuscope till they try
That should be your slogan.
And they're like, my horse tried to take me out at the trailer. And I'm like, sister, I told you.
Yeah.
I told you.
And they're all natural ingredients.
Yes. And they're made right here.
How did you find them?
Paula Bode, I think that's how you say her last name. She's the one that owns Boomer Bites. And I had saw them in Hamilton at a race. And I was like, oh, my little streak of fling. She loves peppermints. Like, I want a bag of these. So I took a bag from her. And she like took me down in the stall over them. And I was like, okay. After that race, I reached out to her and I was like, can I be a dealer for these? Like, these suckers, I need to sell some to make the money to buy them because she's like addicted to them. And she laughed and she was like, yeah, for sure. So I set up to be a dealer and like I have sold some cookies. Like West Texas loves them. And that's what I told Paula. I was like, they are addictive to say the least. Like even the ones that don't like treats, they're like, I'll take you down for them. Like, okay.
Yeah, I've seen him and I'm like, man, my gray horse, if you can get the yellow horse to even take something from you, she must like you.
Yeah.
The gray, he don't care. Like he's like, give it to me, and I'm sure we'll have to give him some because he should have done it before the freaking fiasco happened. For those listening, no,
right?
Golly,
there's some rippers back there.
We almost died earlier.
Don't mind us.
Literally, my flip flops about to get ran over. Okay, so I always end all of my podcast with, why is West Texas special to you?
West Texas has been very friendly to me. My clients are great. The people out here are just pretty wholesome. So, I mean, it's afforded me a lot of opportunity that I don't think I'd have anywhere else.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming today and sharing what Acuscope is and what are the benefits and when to know if your horse is a candidate for it and all the knowledge. It's been, I think, something that is really up and coming in our industry, and I've seen a lot about Acuscope, but not a lot of information about it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I hope I get enough some about what it is.
And just to recap, if someone wants to contact you about these services, what is the best
way? Find me on Facebook, text me. My number's on my Facebook.
And it's Stop the Clock Acuscope.
Stop the Clock Acuscope. Awesome. And they can call me and I'll talk to them for 3 hours if that's what we need to do.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, guys, stay tuned. Thank you for listening to the War Pony Podcast. If you have a story to tell or want to be a sponsored ad on our podcast, you can always contact us at Cassidy@warpony.co. That is CASSIDY @warpony.co. Or you can always find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok @warponyco.